everyone, and welcome back to Follow the Roads with me, Ramey Rhodes. And today I have the Challis High School history teacher, senior project advisor, and track and cross-country coach, Mr. Alex Nielsen. Could you please give us a 30-second introduction as to who you are?
Oh, yeah. Well, I am, like you said, fill a lot of roles here at the school, but the number one thing about me is I'm a family guy. As a lot of people know, I have 7 kids. I just have a little 8-month-old and the oldest is 12 years old. I am a big sports fiend. I love sports. Of course, as you can see, my top ones would be cross country and track, but I love just about anything. I'm a uber competitive person, but I try not to let that show too much. But anyway, I love history, of course, and I love being here. So,
Right. What kind of music do you listen to when you're driving?
When I'm driving? Well, honestly, if I'm driving with my wife, we always listen to country.
Oh.
But that's not really what I generally listen to. I like to listen to, I do a lot of 90s stuff. My favorite band is Dave Matthews Band. I don't know if you've heard a lot from him. But I do listen to a lot of different types as well. I'll even get into things like Beastie Boys or whatever. And I like a lot of different things, but I'd say my number one would be Dave Matthews.
And would going on a long drive kind of change that? Would you choose a different medium like a podcast or an audiobook maybe?
Oh, I do listen to a lot of podcasts and whatnot. I'll venture off into a lot of those types of things. Lately, I've been trying to get my kids to, when I go on long drives with them, listen to some trivia podcasts or whatnot. And they seem to like it so far. So
that's fun. Where's your favorite place you've ever visited?
Favorite place ever visited? Well, I think probably favorite would probably be going to the beaches of Normandy and being able to see what those conditions were like and what it was like as they landed on those beaches on D-Day. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And then kind of somewhat piggybacking off of that, just in general, you've kind of spoke a lot about your kind of time in France. What was your favorite part about that, or what did you enjoy, or how could you compare that to how we live here in America?
Well, one thing that I thought was interesting about being in France is here in the United States, we seem to have a lot of focus on work and working a lot of hours. And, over there, they're actually a lot more laid back in that regard. I think over in France in the summers, every job you were required to give people 30 days off during the summer so that they could go off and travel and see things. I remember times you'd go to a pastry shop where it was just closed because they were off on vacation. And Mondays, a lot of times things weren't open until in the afternoon because they had extra time off. So it's a little bit more laid back in that way. There were some things that surprised me when I went over to France. I thought, I went over there when, about the time we were in Iraq, and a lot of people said, oh yeah, they hate Americans over in France. But, I found out that pretty soon that wasn't the case. They actually really loved Americans and be able to talk to them. They didn't like our president at the time, but they weren't such big fans of George W. Bush, but they did think it was cool to have Americans. So
no. And of course, you kind of had to learn the language somewhat there. And was that kind of a difficult process, or what would you consider a little easier? Or?
Definitely. Okay. So I didn't get to take, when I was in high school, I took German, and so that doesn't help you speak very well. And so I went and I went over to France on a mission with my church, and before I went over there, we spent a couple months in a missionary training center in Provo, Utah, and they helped train us and learn some of the language. And I remember, it was difficult there, and I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get over there. I'll be able to still kind of manage. And I remember the first person I ended up speaking with, I was like, God, they taught us the wrong language over there because I don't understand what they're saying. So it was it was a process. A lot of people come away and say, oh yeah, this person's fluent in, this language or that language. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If I was talking about religious stuff, I could speak just as well as probably any of the French people. But, if I was talking about fixing a car, I didn't know the language at all. So just kind of was difficult. But, being immersed and being over there, it got a lot easier than it would be over here, learning the language.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, when they like learn a language, there's like I guess you could say like a textbook version of it and like what they actually speak. Yep. And did you kind of experience that in some way?
Definitely. I mean, there's different slang and things. There were certain expressions too that, that technically they were correct expressions, but you'd use it with someone and they're like, oh, we can definitely tell you're trying to learn the language because it didn't, they don't use it at all. It's kind of outdated or whatnot. But yeah, there's definitely a big difference between the two. So,
when did you start coaching track and cross country?
So cross country, it's interesting because technically cross country in high school, this is the first year I've been able to coach it on a high school level.
Yeah.
I have coached some cross country. I had an opportunity to do some when I was at BYU, Idaho, and they had kind of this intramural system where they had different teams within the college, and I coached a few years, some runners there. And I definitely have a lot of experience running, but as in actually coaching in high school, this is the first year. So that, it's always been something I've really wanted to do, but hadn't had the opportunity. Track, I coached right away since I've been here. This is my 6th year here. And then I coached all 4 years at my last school. So I've been coaching about 10 years straight up on track. So
what's the kind of although it is your first year with cross country, what's kind of that major difference, whether it's in training in track or cross country?
Well, I think the big difference is with track, you have all these different events. And even those that are distance runners are not just training for one event. And cross country, everyone's running the same race, everyone's doing the same thing. So you have that more, one approach to it. Track, you have to be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes, you might have someone that is running, an 800 and you're going to train them differently than someone who's running a 2 mile. You're definitely going to train them differently than someone that's running the 100-meter dash. So it's, or throwing or different things like that. So track, it's just so varied. And sometimes even, especially at a small school, a lot of these kids are doing different, they're doing very varied things. Here it's nothing to see a thrower going out and running a 100-meter dash and trying to do that. In a larger school, you don't really get that. But you have to learn how to balance some of these different things because there's so many different options.
And do you kind of feel like, since here, obviously small school, but we also, I feel like it's not like the track and cross country programs aren't often put at kind of our forefront, I feel like sometimes. And do you kind of feel that way, or is there some other perspective there?
So I guess I don't quite. So you're saying that it's forefront at the school,
or like it's not like
it's not
a front and center kind of thing that most people would like think about. And does that kind of make like a tighter community with like the kids and people there?
And the interesting thing, if you look at communities within the two sports, I think the one that tends to even have the closest community would be cross country. They really become kind of a family, and part of the reason is they're all doing the same thing, all going through the exact same races at the same time. And but yeah, there's definitely some more tighter knit type things. I feel like a lot of times. I love, one thing I really love about the sports that I coach is that, like I said, I love all sports and I support everyone. But, there's something about these sports that have these individual aspects where, hey, you know what? Our team might not be doing great, but I can work and I can improve and I can get better. And so you always have that chance for success, even if, hey, I might not be having the success as a team as well. But on the flip side, if you are having personal success, you are helping push that team forward quite a bit too. So,
yeah. And then so you've coached a lot of kids who've made it to those state championships and are state champions. What do you think is like the main thing that made it was like, this is the it factor that got them there?
It factor, it's different for a lot of different kids, because there are kids that you get them out there and they are just naturally talented, and for whatever reason they don't necessarily have to put in as much work. They just kind of had it, and as long as they're out, they're going to be competing for that. But then you get kids that are really dedicated, and that's when it becomes special. Kids that are willing to go the extra mile and push a little bit more. One person I often bring up is Garrett Hunt. And a big reason for that is because it's not often you find someone that's as talented as Garrett was, and that is willing to work as hard as he was. And so, Garrett went out there and, he would tell me, hey, is there something more you can give me today? And so I think that might be a little bit of the it that you might be talking about, is like, hey, am I looking just to do the minimum? Am I looking to do a little bit more? I think that's a big part of it. So,
yeah, just that wanting to get more from that.
Exactly.
Where have you lived throughout your life?
So, honestly, growing up, I didn't move at all until I went to college. I grew up in, small town of Basalt, Idaho, went to Firth High School. We actually competed against Challis when I was in high school. So they were in our same classification. Challis now we're quite a bit smaller, but it used to be we're
more larger. Yeah.
And so we competed against Challis. After I left Firth, I went up to Coeur d'Alene for a couple years. At that point, that's when I went to France and Belgium on a mission for my church. So I spent a couple years there. And then afterwards, I lived in Rexburg. I went to school in Rexburg. And then after I got married, I ended up had a couple stints in Utah, and about a 4-year stint in Montana too. So, and then here. So,
what sports did you play in high school?
Competed in. It would have been cross country and track. I even would fill out a full indoor track season my junior and senior year, but as in played sports, I mean, I tried everything. I remember playing baseball as a little kid, and I wasn't very good at baseball. In fact, I thought it was an accomplishment getting on base because they hit me with a pitch. So so anyway, I wasn't necessarily great at a lot of them, but I did do a lot of sports.
Well, what's kind of your like major life defining moment for you?
Life
in a way.
Oh, geez,
big question.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I'm going to share another one, but I do say that, I think any parent that has kids, they have to say, it's having your kids, because your life changes, your focus changes, and what's important changes as well. I think other than that, I think one of the big ones for me, and I share this, and I try to share this with my kids, because, I was not a very naturally talented athlete. I didn't go out there and was blowing everyone's doors off or anything like that. And in fact, as I talked about it, I tried a lot of sports. I wasn't necessarily very good at much. And I finally went into running. I actually hated running when as a lot of kids tell me, but and I try to tell them it'll grow on you. But anyway, I remember finding running, and I wasn't actually particularly good at it at the time either.
Mm-hmm.
But I set a goal early on, and a goal I wrote down, gave to my coach, and I'm sure he laughed at. But it was to be a state champion in running, and it was something that I started off, and I wasn't even really JV quality runner when I started off in cross country. My first year, second year, I improved. I ended up being top, basically our 14th runner on our team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, I got to do something more. And I started waking up early in the mornings, running. I ran throughout the summers. I did a whole bunch of things to try to improve. And slowly by slowly, I ended up improving. So I went from one of these low-end athletes to my senior year. I was, one of the favorites in the state. And, I unfortunately got bronchitis my senior year, actually right before state. But I ended up, I was favored to win the 2 mile. I got second. And then the turnaround the next day, I was ranked, maybe 8th in the mile. And I remember going out with my teammate, which was ranked number 1. And I just kind of decided, you know what, I'm not feeling great. Can't really breathe. I'm just going to stay on his tail. And I stayed right on his tail throughout 3 3.25 laps. And then I decided, I'm just going to go with him. And I ended up, me and him pulled it into first and second. And this kid I've never really outkicked in my life, but I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And rounding that last corner, I pulled just right in front of him. I was maybe a step in front of him. And he notices, he tries to speed up. I try to speed up. And the whole way down the stretch, we're just one step away from each other. And it was the most painful 100-meter death I've ever had in my life. But somehow I was able to stay ahead of him, and I won a state championship.
Wow.
And that was defining in a lot of ways. I think, saying what you can do if you set a goal and you put your efforts and you work towards it. So I would say, after being a dad, I'd say that.
No. Wow. And I'm guessing that's just kind of something you've carried throughout your entire life, because it's a.
Well, it's something you think about when time gets tough, when things are hard, and you're like, oh, this really bites. You look back, you know what? I can come out the other side. Things have been worse. I can come out the other side. So,
where did you go to college at? You kind of briefly said it before.
Yeah,
but
so I had a couple of different colleges. I started off at North Idaho College in Coeur d'Alene, and I ran cross country and track for them. And then I went on mission, and I had kind of debated about what I was going to do afterwards, but I eventually decided to go to BYU Idaho in Rexburg. So I had those 2 colleges.
And what was kind of the degree you were going after? Was it always the same, or did you kind of flip around?
So that's interesting too, because I honestly, when I started going, at North Idaho College, I was like, I'm there to run. And so I didn't have much focus. I went to class and whatnot, but I didn't necessarily have a focus. When I went to BYU Idaho, I'd always had kind of a thought on teaching. However, it wasn't necessarily solidified, hey, I want to teach. In fact, I first was a history major, not a history education major. And so I kind of dabbled for a while, and I got a whole bunch of credits there. And eventually I decided, you know what, I got to figure out what I'm doing. And then I kind of went back and thought about what I wanted, and, I landed on teaching at that point. So,
what kind of drew you the most to teaching then?
Well, quite honestly, I think one thing is, I wanted to be able to coach. And in my experience, when I was younger, all my coaches taught. Yeah. And so that was one thing that drew me to it, is coaching. But the other thing I would say is I did have a love of teaching. I had worked at a scout camp for several summers while I was growing up. And one of our main jobs was to teach merit badges. And I just remember loving doing that. And, I loved it when kids would understand and learn and grow and hey, that's how that works, or oh, this is how you do that. And I just loved it. So I think that's the two things that probably drew me to teaching.
Yeah. And then teaching history directly, how does that?
So honestly, I think a lot of that love came from my dad. My dad loved history. I remember watching quite a few documentaries and different things when I was growing up with him, and just having a love for history. I'll say I might have had a love, but I didn't necessarily always have an understanding of history for quite a long time. I know this is geography. I remember when I got my my call, or where I was going to go on my mission, I opened it up and it said Belgium and the Netherlands and France and all that. And I was like, well, I didn't say France. I said Belgium and the Netherlands. And my sister asked, before she knew where I was going, she asked me, where are you going? Are you going somewhere in Europe? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't even know Belgium was in Europe. So that was how bad I was at the time. But, I've definitely improved since then.
No. That's good. Were there any kind of other options you were considering, that can be either as like a career or other teaching, to teach other different things?
Teach different things. Well, I think one of the things I always considered, not necessarily teaching, but one things I always considered was doing things like computers. I love computers and trying to figure things out with them, and I love technology, so I did kind of contemplate doing something in that realm. I did contemplate doing some other things with history outside of teaching, but I found that is difficult and takes a lot of writing, and so I was like, I don't know about that. So anyway, I think those would be kind of the main ones. When I was really young, I dabbled in the thought, because I was like, oh, I love sports. And I was like, well, how do I stay involved in sports? Well, be a sports agent or something like that. I don't think that would have been a good idea. So.
What's your favorite unit of history to teach?
Well, I think I may have told you this before, but I love talking about the French Revolution. I think a lot of that stems from, well, the craziness of it, but also the fact that I was over in France, and if you recall Maximilien Robespierre, one of the areas I was in was where he was born, and so that was really cool, And it was interesting because they almost celebrated him, and now, if you look at him, he's looked at as a pretty big villain, but they still kind of celebrate him over there.
Yes. So it's just kind of one that you were able to kind of like visually realize and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's kind of one, I don't know if this is kind of too specific, but like a unit where it's like students are like, I don't really know about that. But then once you start getting into it, they're like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting.
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think all of history is interesting if you can just, decide to really dive into it and figure some things out. I think all students kind of gravitate towards war and different things.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Rainey.
That's okay.
And it's hard to put yourself in some of them's shoes on whether they thought it was interesting or not. I know I always enjoy talking about, some people in the Gilded Age where, with some of those capitalists like Rockefeller or, Carnegie or different things like that. I don't know, but I think, that can interest a lot of kids too. So.
What are some of the hobbies you have?
Hobbies. Well, I love sports, so just about anything to do there.
Yeah.
One thing I really like to do is I like to play disc golf. However, there's not very many places around here.
Yeah.
So it's pretty scarce, but I love doing disc golf. One thing I like to dabble in, I'm not going to say I'm great at it or anything, but I love dabbling in like guitar and whatnot, and playing the guitar. I think I played it for you guys one time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like crafty things. I like, figuring things out on computers and whatnot. So yeah, those are a few things.
How do you deal with stress?
Stress. Well, honestly, preferably go on a run, so run or a walk or something. I just feel like all of those, doing something active always helps you to kind of unwind.
Yeah.
So
focus it onto a different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how has being the senior project advisor been?
Well, honestly, I think it, I didn't know 100% what I was getting into at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in your eyes, you think about, okay, well, the kids know what they need to do. They're going to go do it. But not necessarily. I think learning. I think this class has been definitely a learning process. Like, okay, we got to figure this out a little bit more for following years. But it's been fun though, because I have been able to see some of these projects. It's been fun to see some of the new things coming up with what you've done.
Yeah.
I've seen some other things that hey, I've never seen before, like some stop animation. Some different things that you haven't been able to see, and it's been fun to see what kids are coming up with and doing. And we have someone building a pool table and whatnot. So it's been fun, but some challenges as well.
Yeah. What do you think is that biggest challenge right now?
Well, I think just getting kids to understand they need to get things done.
Get on it. Yeah.
This is not like something we can sit here and procrastinate. And I think and I think Ms. Shepard has voiced to me before that, that's an issue just with every class, but making sure that they realize, hey, we need to crack the whip a little bit. So
what would you say is the hardest part about your job?
Hardest part?
Yeah.
Oh, that is a good question. I would say, just trying to keep up with the various relationships, because some students, you connect well with and some you don't. And just trying to know, how can I connect with each student? It's, can be challenging.
And I guess you could kind of see this as similar in a way. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing the education system currently, whether that's locally, statewide, or nationally?
Oh, well, I think one thing, and I think the first thing that pops into my mind is something about, AI, right? Like, I think AI is great, but we need to know how are we going to manage it, because there's really good uses of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be around, so you need to be able to use it. But also I fear that sometimes students are forgetting that they need to learn the skills in the first place before being able to use that wisely. And so that's a challenge. I think just technology use is great, but at the same time, just not even just on the AI side, but just making sure that, hey, there's appropriate times to use technology and whatnot. So I think those are a couple of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. What kind of goes into designing your lesson plans? Because of course you have probably, I would say in the school, some of the more interactive or kind of dynamic where it's not like always the same thing, but it's kind of changing back and forth.
Well, honestly, I sit there and I do a lot of looking things up. I do a lot of work trying to find these different lessons and over the years tweaking them, hopefully anyway, to do that. I guess it varies from one to the other. I'm always open. I try to always be open to different ideas and different things. Of course, I have some basic things I try to do, but at the same time, I try to be open-minded, and I don't try to rest on what I've done the previous year. I try to say, hey, what can I do to change things, improve it, help with the learning? So I guess it probably doesn't answer your question the best, but it really does vary. So,
Yeah.
And I usually get here pretty early in the morning to try to, polish things up and whatnot. So,
so then kind of going into that, what does your kind of daily routine look like?
okay. So honestly, my day, it starts fairly early. I usually get up around about 4:15 in the morning. I get up and get ready. I like to do the work at school, and so I come here. I usually get here. It depends. Right now, I've been getting a little later, but generally I get here about 5:30, and then I'll start my preparing. I'll print the things off I need, look at the things I need, kind of adjust things, make my plans. And then, honestly, usually that goes right up until start, and then we get going on whatever happens to be the day's work and what we're looking at accomplishing.
So I have these little...
Oh, okay. Conversation cards?
Yep.
Okay.
Just 3 questions. Just pick 3, hand them back to me.
Okay.
And some of them aren't the greatest questions at all.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah. What new breakfast food would you invent?
Well, I don't know. So my favorite thing to eat is, I love potatoes. I'm an Idaho boy through and through. So, it'd have to be something with potatoes. Have to be something with cheese, because that's always good. I don't know. Maybe I think a breakfast sandwich with some kind of potatoes and cheese, and maybe throw on some sausage. I think that would be good. There you go.
Perfect. So, if you could create a life-size version of any board game, which would you choose?
Oh, geez. Let's say, just because this popped in my mind, I don't know if it's actually what I would do, but, just popped in my mind, playing Mousetrap with the kids.
No.
So that would be kind of fun to see something like that.
Yeah, I thought of Battleship. I think that'd be kind of cool. What will you be able to do on the internet in 5 years that you're not able to do now?
Oh my heck. I don't know if there's a limit. So that's the hard part. You never, even with AI, just the search has just changed, because now you can, you get a lot different results because AI kicks in and understands things at a better level. I don't know. I'm not sure what I would say would be the difference. I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah. And then lastly, are there any questions about anything that you want to ask me that I can actually answer?
I can actually answer. So let's see. What is Ramey going? Where's Ramey going to be in, let's just say, 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping to be doing some kind of electrical job, like electrician type thing, getting into school, and in 5 years, maybe by that point, being a journeyman electrician.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it. Did that this summer. I thought that was a lot of fun.
We definitely need those. So
yeah.
So there's a big demand. So that's great.
Yeah,
it's great. So awesome.
Any last remarks?
No, I think that's great. Thank you for talking to me. So
of course. All right. Thank you for your time, and thanks to everybody for listening. Your support means everything. If you have any feedback, let me know, and I'll see you next time on Follow the Roads.